The stars looked the same as they always had from the observation deck of the stellar dawn. Commander Zefix pressed his three-fingered hand against the cold metal wall and watched the distant suns twinkle in the darkness. His blue skin reflected the soft glow of the ship's lights as he checked his datapad one more time. The Galactic Council had given him a simple job: count every intelligent species in this section of the galaxy. Write down their names, their home worlds, and their level of technology. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. The galaxy was always changing, and the Council needed to know who lived where. Dr. Lyra Voss walked up behind him, her footsteps quiet on the metal floor. She was from the Meridian Collective, a peaceful group of people who looked almost like tall, thin humans except for their silver eyes and pointed ears. She carried a thick stack of papers and looked worried. "Commander, I need to show you something strange," she said, setting the papers down on a nearby table. "I have been reading old records from different worlds, and I keep finding the same thing over and over." Zefix turned away from the window and looked at the papers. They were covered in symbols and writing from dozens of different alien languages. Some he could read, others were completely foreign to him. "What am I looking at?" he asked. Lyra pointed to several lines of text that had been marked with red ink. "These are references to a species called humans. They are mentioned in records from the Carillion Empire, the Nexari Federation, even the old Draknari war logs. But here is the strange part. According to our current database, humans do not exist." Zefix picked up one of the papers and studied it closely. The writing was in ancient Carillion, a language he had learned years ago during his time as a diplomat. The text clearly mentioned humans from something called Sol 3, describing them as traders who had visited Carillion space stations. "This could be a translation error," he said, though he did not sound convinced. "Old languages can be tricky." "That is what I thought too," Lyra replied, pulling out more papers. "But look at this. Archaeological teams have found human artifacts on 12 different worlds. Tools, weapons, even pieces of their technology. Some of this stuff is only 500 years old. If humans existed that recently, where did they go?" The ship's communication system crackled to life, interrupting their conversation. A deep voice filled the room, speaking with the harsh accent of the Draknari hegemony. "All Council ships, this is Captain Jorik of the war vessel Bloodfang. We are approaching the meeting point for tomorrow's session. I trust you have all completed your surveys without wasting time on foolish theories." Zefix activated the communication panel. "This is Commander Zefix. We have completed our primary survey, but Dr. Voss has discovered some interesting historical data that may require further investigation." Jorik's laugh was cold and mocking. "Let me guess. The good doctor has found more ghost stories about the mythical humans." "I have heard these tales before, Zefix. Every few years someone claims to have found proof that humans existed. It is always nothing more than wishful thinking or poor research." "The evidence is quite substantial," Lyra said, stepping closer to the communication panel. "We have physical artifacts, historical records from multiple sources, and consistent references across different time periods. This is not wishful thinking." "Even if these humans did exist," Jorik replied, his voice growing more aggressive, "they clearly were not strong enough to survive in our galaxy. The weak are forgotten for good reason, Doctor. I suggest you focus on species that actually matter." The communication ended with a harsh click, leaving Zefix and Lyra alone in the observation room. They looked at each other in silence for a moment before Lyra spoke again. "He is wrong, you know. The evidence shows that humans were not weak at all. In fact, every reference I have found describes them as remarkably resourceful. They helped other species during emergencies, shared their technology freely, and seemed to get along with almost everyone." Zefix sat down at the table and began looking through the papers more carefully. One document caught his attention, a report from a Nexari trade station describing how human engineers had saved their colony from a reactor meltdown. Another told of human medics who had helped fight a plague on a Carillion world. "If they were so helpful and well-liked, what happened to them?" he asked. Lyra pulled out a star chart covered in colored dots. Each dot represented a known human, settlement, or sighting based on the historical records she had gathered. The chart showed that humans had spread throughout this entire section of the galaxy, establishing colonies and trade routes, just like any other major species. "That is the real mystery," she said, pointing to dates written next to each dot. "All of these references end at roughly the same time, about 400 years ago. It is as if every human in the galaxy just vanished overnight." Zephyx studied the chart more closely. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Human activity had been steady and widespread for centuries, then suddenly stopped everywhere at once. No species simply disappeared like that without leaving some trace of what had happened to them. "We need to investigate this further," he said, finally. "If an entire species can vanish without explanation, the Council needs to know about it. There might be a threat out there that we do not understand." Lyra nodded eagerly. "I was hoping you would say that. I have already identified several locations where human settlements were reported. If we can find physical evidence of what happened to them, we might be able to solve this mystery." As their ship continued through space toward the Council meeting point, neither Zephyx nor Lyra realized that their investigation would change everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the truth about humanity was waiting to be discovered. And that truth would shake the foundations of every civilization in known space. The humans had not died out as everyone believed. They had simply learned to hide in plain sight, watching and waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves once again. That moment was coming sooner than anyone could imagine. The dust storms on Kepler 442b never stopped. They had been raging for over 300 years, turning what used to be a green mining world into a barren wasteland of red dirt and broken rocks. Dr. Lyra Voss pulled her protective suit tighter as another gust of wind tried to knock her over. "The readings are getting stronger," she called out to Commander Zephyx, who was walking beside her with a heavy scanner in his hands. "Whatever we are looking for is just ahead." They had been walking for 2 hours across the empty planet's surface. The Galactic Council had not wanted to approve this expedition, but Lyra had convinced them that finding proof of human existence was important enough to risk the dangerous journey. Behind them, their small exploration team followed carefully. The group included Dr. Pete Collins, a human archaeology expert from the few records they had found, and Captain Nina Hayes, a security officer who had volunteered for the mission. Both wore the same protective gear that kept the toxic dust out of their breathing systems. "There," Zephyx pointed ahead to what looked like a small hill covered in red dirt. "The scanner says there are metal structures buried under all that dust." They climbed the hill slowly, fighting against the constant wind. At the top, Pete pulled out a small digging tool and began clearing away the dirt. Within minutes, he had uncovered a piece of smooth metal with strange markings on it. "This is definitely human writing," he said, brushing more dirt away. "I can make out some of the letters. It says something about a mining station." The team worked together to clear away more of the dirt. Soon they had uncovered what looked like the entrance to an underground building. The door was made of a metal that none of them recognized, and it had somehow survived centuries of dust storms without any damage. Lyra ran her scanner over the door. "The structure extends deep underground. This is not just a small outpost. It is a complete settlement." Captain Hayes stepped forward and examined the door mechanism. After a few minutes of careful work, she managed to get it open. The door slid aside with a soft hiss, revealing a dark tunnel that led down into the earth. "The air inside is still breathable," Zephyx said, checking his instruments. "Somehow their life support systems are still working after all these years." They entered the tunnel and walked down a long hallway lined with doors on both sides. Emergency lighting flickered on as they moved, activated by sensors that had been waiting centuries for someone to return. The walls were covered with pictures and writing in the human language that Pete was slowly learning to read. "This way," Nina called from ahead. She had found a larger room that looked like it had been used for meetings or social gatherings. Tables and chairs were arranged neatly, as if people had just stepped out for a moment and would be back soon. In the center of the room, they found something that made them all stop and stare. A large screen was mounted on the wall, and it was still working. As they watched, it flickered to life and began playing what looked like a recording. The image showed two humans sitting at one of the tables in the same room. The man was tall with dark hair and kind eyes. The woman was shorter with blonde hair pulled back in a simple style. Both looked tired and worried. "This is Jake Morrison, Colony Administrator for New Haven Station," the man said, looking directly into the camera. "The date is March 15th, 2387. This may be our final log entry." The woman leaned forward. "I am Lisa Carter, Chief Engineer. We have received word that the trade blockade around our system is now complete. No ships are allowed in or out. We have enough food and supplies for maybe 6 months." Jake's voice was calm, but his hands were shaking slightly. "We know why this is happening. The elder species do not want us here. They see humans as a threat to their control of the galaxy. We have heard reports that other human colonies are facing the same problems." Lisa pulled out a datapad and read from it. "Colony reports from the past year show a clear pattern. First, they cut off our trade routes. Then they spread rumors that we are dangerous or untrustworthy. Finally, they hire mercenaries to attack our settlements and make it look like random pirate raids. But we know the truth," Jake continued. "We have intercepted communications between several of the major powers. They are working together to force humanity out of the galaxy. They call it the solution to the human problem." The recording paused for a moment as both humans looked at each other with sad expressions. When Jake spoke again, his voice was different, stronger and more determined. "We will not give them the satisfaction of watching us die slowly. Every human colony has been working on the same project for the past 2 years. We call it the Great Withdrawal. We are going to disappear completely, but not in the way they expect." Lisa smiled for the first time in the recording. "Let them think they have won. Let them believe that humans were too weak to survive in their galaxy. We will be watching from the shadows, and when the time is right, we will show them what we have really learned." The recording ended, leaving the exploration team standing in stunned silence. Pete was the first to speak. "They did not die out. They left on purpose." Lyra began recording everything with her scanner. "This changes everything we thought we knew about human extinction. If they had the organization and technology to coordinate a galaxy-wide evacuation, they were far more advanced than anyone realized." Zephyx activated his communication device. "Stellar Dawn, this is the surface team. We need to contact the Council immediately. We have found evidence that human disappearance was not random. It was planned." As they prepared to leave the abandoned colony, Captain Hayes noticed something else. Near the back of the room was another door, and this one had been sealed with what looked like advanced technology. Above it, someone had written a message in simple galactic common language. "For those who come looking, we did not forget, and we did not forgive. We simply learned to wait. The stars will remember what you made us become." The team left Kepler 442b with more questions than answers. But one thing was now clear. Humanity had not been destroyed by their enemies. They had chosen to vanish, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, they were still out there. The question now was not what had happened to the humans, but what they had been doing during their 4 centuries of hiding. Back on their ship, Elder Thax of the Void Seers was waiting to speak with them. His ancient species had remained neutral during most galactic conflicts, but he had agreed to share what he knew about the human disappearance. "You have found the truth," he said in his slow, careful voice. "My people witnessed the Great Withdrawal. Every human ship, every colony, every trace of their civilization vanished within a single solar cycle. We assumed they had fled to die quietly somewhere far away. We were wrong." Dr. Lyra Voss stared at the massive energy readings on her scanner and shook her head in disbelief. The trail they had been following for weeks led directly into the Abyss Nebula, a region of space that every civilized species avoided at all costs. "The quantum signatures are definitely human," she told Commander Zephyx as their ship, Pioneer's Light, moved slowly toward the nebula's edge. "But the energy levels are impossible. No known technology can produce readings this strong." Zephyx looked worried as he watched the swirling clouds of dark matter ahead of them. The nebula was beautiful but deadly, filled with storms that could tear apart any normal spacecraft. The Council ordered us to stop our investigation. They said it was too dangerous to continue. The Council is afraid of what we might find, Lyra replied. If humans have been hiding in there for 400 years, they have had plenty of time to develop new technologies, maybe even technologies that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Captain Nina Hayes joined them on the bridge carrying a report from the ship's engineers. The shielding modifications are complete. We should be able to survive the nebula's outer storms, but I cannot promise anything about what we might find deeper inside. Dr. Pete Collins was studying star charts at a nearby station. According to these readings, there is something massive about 50 light-years into the nebula. The gravitational signatures suggest a structure the size of a small moon, but it is not showing up on our visual scanners. Zefix made his decision. We have come too far to turn back now. The galaxy needs to know the truth about what happened to humanity. Take us in, but slowly. I want full sensor sweeps every few minutes. The Pioneer's light entered the Abyss Nebula like a small fish swimming into an ocean of fire. Dark matter storms raged around them, creating spectacular light shows that would have been beautiful if they were not so dangerous. The ship's hull groaned under the pressure, but their modified shields held strong. Hours passed as they navigated deeper into the nebula. The storms grew stronger, and strange energy readings appeared on their sensors. Pete noticed that the readings seemed to follow patterns, as if they were not natural phenomena, but artificial signals. Someone is scanning us, he said suddenly. These energy pulses are too regular to be random. We are being watched. Before anyone could respond, their communication system activated on its own. A clear human voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect galactic common language. Unknown. Vessel, you are entering restricted space. Please state your purpose and intentions. The bridge crew looked at each other in shock. After 4 centuries of silence, they were hearing a living human voice. Lyra stepped forward to the communication panel. This is Dr. Lyra Voss of the Galactic Council Research Vessel Pioneer's Light. We are investigating the disappearance of human civilization. We mean no harm. There was a long pause before the voice responded. Dr. Voss, you and your team are welcome to visit New Earth Station. Please, follow the navigation beacon we are transmitting. Be advised that any aggressive actions will result in immediate defensive measures. A new signal appeared on their navigation system, showing a clear path through the storms. As they followed it, the nebula around them seemed to calm down, as if the storms were being controlled somehow. After another hour of careful flying, they saw something that made them all gasp in amazement. Ahead of them, partially hidden by swirling clouds of gas and dust, was the largest artificial structure any of them had ever seen. It was not just a space station, it was an entire city floating in space, complete with parks, residential areas, and what looked like industrial districts. Welcome to New Earth Station, the voice said as their ship was guided to a docking bay. Population 53 million and growing. Please prepare for standard docking procedures. The docking bay was enormous, filled with ships of designs that none of them recognized. The technology looked human, but it was far more advanced than anything in the galactic databases. Some of the ships seemed to be made of materials that bent light around them, making them nearly invisible. As they left their ship, they were met by a tall man in a blue uniform. He had dark skin and a friendly smile, but his eyes showed the intelligence and caution of someone who had lived through difficult times. I am Captain Ben Rodriguez, Station Security Chief, he said, shaking hands with each of them in the human custom. It has been a long time since we have had visitors from the outside galaxy. Lyra looked around in wonder at the bustling docking bay. Humans of all ages were working alongside advanced robots and artificial intelligence systems. Children played in areas set aside for recreation, while adults went about their daily business with the calm efficiency of a well-organized society. How is this possible? She asked. How have you survived in this nebula for so long? Ben smiled and gestured for them to follow him. When you are forced to live in hell, you either die or you learn to make hell work for you. We chose the second option. Come, Let me show you what we have built. They walked through corridors that were clean and well lit, past windows that showed incredible views of the nebula around them. The station was not just surviving, it was thriving. They passed schools, hospitals, research laboratories, and recreational facilities that rivaled anything in civilized space. The nebula's dark matter storms provide unlimited energy once you learn how to harness them, Ben explained as they walked. The gravitational anomalies make perfect hiding spots for our facilities. And the radiation that kills most life forms actually makes our technology work better. They entered a large observation deck where they met Amy Foster, the station's chief engineer. She was a woman in her 40s with short red hair and hands that showed years of working with machinery. The Abyss Nebula taught us things about physics that the rest of the galaxy never learned, she said, activating a control panel. For example, watch this. The entire observation deck suddenly became transparent as if they were floating in open space. Then, just as quickly, it returned to normal. Selective phase shifting, Amy explained casually. We can make our ships and stations exist in multiple dimensions at once. To most scanners, we simply do not exist. Pete stared at her in amazement. You have developed technology that is centuries ahead of anything else in the galaxy. Why have you stayed hidden? Ben's expression became more serious. Because we learned something important during our exile. The galaxy did not want us to exist, so we made that dream come true. We became ghosts, watching and protecting from the shadows. Amy nodded. We have prevented 3 major wars, stopped 2 plague outbreaks, and saved dozens of worlds from natural disasters, all without anyone knowing we were there. But now you are revealing yourselves to us, Zephyx pointed out. Why? Ben and Amy exchanged glances before Ben answered. Because something is coming that will threaten every living thing in this galaxy. We have been preparing for it for decades, but we cannot face it alone. The time for hiding is ending, as they looked out at the incredible sight of New Earth Station. The visitors realized that humanity had not just survived their exile. They had evolved beyond anything the galaxy could have imagined. The question now was whether the rest of the galaxy was ready to accept what humans had become. There are 47 other stations like this one scattered throughout the nebula, Amy said quietly. Each one home to millions of humans who have never forgotten what was done to us. We are no longer the same species that was driven from civilized space. We are something new, something stronger. The revelation that humanity had not only survived but grown into a hidden civilization of incredible power would change everything. The galaxy that had tried to erase them was about to discover that humans had spent 4 centuries becoming something far beyond what anyone had expected. The news spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Despite all attempts to keep it secret, word of humanity's survival reached every major civilization within days. On the Draknari homeworld, War Marshal Vex slammed his armored fist against the metal table so hard that it left a deep dent. Impossible, he growled to his assembled officers. These humans were weaklings who ran away like cowards 400 years ago. They cannot be as powerful as these reports claim. Captain Jorik, who had mocked the human investigation from the beginning, stood at attention beside the war table. Marshal, the evidence is clear. They have built an entire civilization in the Abyss Nebula. Our spies report that they possess technology far beyond anything we have seen. Then we will test this technology, Vex declared, his red eyes glowing with anger. Gather the 3rd Fleet. We will show these ghosts what happens to species that think they can hide from the Draknari hegemony. Within hours, the largest military force in Draknari history was assembling at the edge of their territory. 1,000 warships of various sizes prepared for battle, their crews eager to prove that no hidden human civilization could match their firepower. News of the Draknari fleet's movement reached the Carillion Empire and the Nexari Federation. Both powers had also lost face when the truth about humanity came out, and their leaders were angry that a species they had tried to destroy was now stronger than ever. In the depths of the Abyss Nebula, Admiral Kate Sullivan received the reports with calm professionalism. She was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and the steady demeanor of someone who had spent decades preparing for this moment. How many ships are heading our way? She asked General Paul Martinez, her second in command. Paul checked his datapad. Initial count shows 1,000 Draknari vessels, plus support fleets from at least 6 other species. Total enemy force is approximately 1,500 ships. Kate nodded thoughtfully. And they expect us to be afraid because we have been hiding for so long. They still do not understand what we have become. The human leadership had hoped to avoid conflict. For weeks they had tried diplomatic contact with the approaching fleets. President Carol White of New Earth Station had sent messages offering to share human technology freely with all species, asking only for peace and equality in return. The response had been simple and brutal. War Marshal Vex had transmitted a single message to the nebula: surrender now or be destroyed. The galaxy has no place for human lies and deception. As the enemy fleets approached the nebula's edge, Commander Steve Parker prepared his ship for what would become known as the Battle of the Abyss. His vessel, the Defiant, looked small compared to the massive Draknari warships, but appearances could be deceiving in human space. All stations report ready, sir, his communications officer reported. The enemy fleet has entered the outer nebula. They are having trouble with the dark matter storms. Steve smiled grimly. Of course they are. They think this is just another space battle. They have no idea they are about to fight the nebula itself. The first Draknari ships pushed deeper into the abyss, their hulls groaning under the pressure of the dark matter storms. Their sensors were nearly useless in the chaotic energy environment, and their communications were being disrupted by interference that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Where are they? Captain Jorik demanded from the bridge of his flagship. Our scouts reported massive human installations, but I see nothing except empty space and storms. His answer came when the space around his ship suddenly filled with human vessels that had not been there moments before. They seemed to materialize out of nothing, their hulls shimmering with energy that bent light and reality around them. Steve Parker's voice echoed across all communication channels, reaching every ship in the attacking fleet. You wanted us gone, so we became ghosts. You ignored our suffering, so we learned to thrive in hell itself. You thought you could erase us from history. But humans are the one species in this galaxy that gets stronger when pushed to the edge. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The attacking fleet outnumbered the human ships 10-1. But numbers meant nothing when facing technology that defied the laws of physics as everyone understood them. Draknari weapons fired at human ships, only to watch their energy beams pass harmlessly through hulls that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Human vessels moved through solid asteroids as if they were made of air, then solidified just long enough to fire weapons that could disrupt space-time itself. War Marshal Vex watched in horror as his flagship's most powerful weapons had no effect on a single human destroyer. Impossible, he whispered as the human ship seemed to phase in and out of reality. Nothing can survive a direct hit from our plasma cannons. The human ship responded by firing a single beam that passed through the Draknari flagship's shields, as if they did not exist. Instead of destroying the ship, the beam shut down every system on board, leaving the massive vessel floating helplessly in space. Admiral Kate Sullivan opened a communication channel to the disabled flagship. War Marshal Vex, your crew is unharmed, but your ship is now completely under our control. We could have destroyed every vessel in your fleet within the first minute of this battle, but we chose mercy instead. All across the nebula, the same scene was playing out. Human ships were systematically disabling enemy vessels without causing casualties. The attackers found their weapons useless, their shields penetrated, and their ships helpless against technology that seemed like magic. General Paul Martinez coordinated the human response from New Earth Station's command center. All enemy vessels are disabled, Admiral. No casualties on either side. The attacking fleet is completely neutralized. Kate nodded with satisfaction. Good. Now comes the hard part. She opened a galaxy-wide communication channel that reached every civilized world simultaneously. Her image appeared on screens across thousands of star systems as she addressed the species that had tried to destroy humanity. People of the galaxy, I am Admiral Kate Sullivan of the United Human Fleet. For 400 years you have lived under the protection of beings you tried to erase from existence. We have prevented wars, stopped plagues, and saved worlds from destruction, all while remaining hidden because you made it clear we were not welcome. The transmission showed images of human interventions throughout the centuries. Secret missions to stop asteroid impacts, cloaked medical ships fighting diseases, invisible peacekeeping forces preventing conflicts before they could start. Today, you sent fleets to destroy us because you learned we still existed. We could have wiped out every attacking ship, but we chose to show you the same mercy we have always shown. We are not your enemies, even though you have been ours. War Marshal Vex, listening from his disabled flagship, felt something he had never experienced before. Genuine fear mixed with shame. These humans could have destroyed his entire fleet with ease, but they had chosen to spare every life. Kate's image looked directly into the camera with eyes that held both sadness and determination. The galaxy is about to face a threat that will require all of us to work together. We can either continue the old pattern of fear and hatred, or we can build something better. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. Time is running out for all of us. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. In a single day, humanity had demonstrated that they were no longer the weak species that had been driven into exile. They had become something far more powerful and far more merciful than anyone had imagined possible. The fleets that had come to destroy the humans now found themselves rescued by the same beings they had tried to kill. Human ships were already beginning repair operations on the disabled vessels, offering medical aid and safe passage home to anyone who wanted it. The message was clear. Humanity had returned from the shadows, not as conquerors seeking revenge, but as protectors offering salvation. The galaxy would never be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any meeting in its 1,000-year history. Representatives from dozens of species sat in uncomfortable silence as they waited for the human delegation to arrive. Many of them had been part of the original conspiracy to drive humanity from the galaxy, and now they faced the consequences of their actions. Elder Thax of the Void Seers spoke first, his ancient voice carrying the weight of centuries. We have brought this crisis upon ourselves. The humans offered us partnership 400 years ago, and we responded with fear and hatred. Now they return to us with power beyond our understanding, and we must face the truth of what we have done. War Marshal Vex sat in his designated chair, still recovering from his defeat in the Abyss Nebula. His once proud demeanor had been replaced by something resembling humility. My fleet was destroyed without losing a single life, he said quietly. These humans could have killed us all, but they chose mercy. I do not understand why. The main doors of the council chamber opened, and Dr. Helen Brooks entered with a small group of human advisors. She was a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and the calm confidence of someone who had spent years preparing for this moment. Unlike the elaborate robes and armor worn by the alien representatives, she dressed simply in a plain blue uniform. Honored members of the Galactic Council, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. I am Dr. Helen Brooks, Chief Diplomat for the United Human Colonies. I speak for all humans who have lived in exile for the past 4 centuries. She walked to the center of the chamber and activated a holographic display that showed images of human settlements throughout the galaxy before the Great Withdrawal. We did not come here today to seek revenge or to claim dominance over your civilizations. We came because the galaxy is facing a threat that requires all of us to work together. The hologram changed to show long-range sensor data from the edge of the galaxy. Strange signals and energy readings indicated something massive approaching from the void between galaxies. Our deep space monitoring systems have detected evidence of an approaching invasion force, Helen continued. We call them the Void Collective, a machine intelligence that has already consumed 3 entire galaxies. They strip worlds of all life and resources, converting everything into more ships and weapons for their fleet. Gasps of shock echoed through the chamber as the data showed the true scale of the threat. The approaching force contained millions of ships, each one larger than the biggest vessels in the current galactic fleet. According to our calculations, they will reach the outer systems of our galaxy in approximately 50 years, Helen said. None of our civilizations, working alone, has any chance of survival against this threat. Commander Zefix, who had been part of the original investigation that led to humanity's rediscovery, stood up from his seat. Dr. Brooks, if this threat is so great, why are you willing to help us? We tried to destroy your people. You have every right to let us face this danger alone. Helen smiled sadly. Because that is not who we are. During our exile, we learned something important about survival. It is not about being the strongest or the most advanced. It is about working together, protecting each other, and never giving up hope. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed images of the hidden human civilization in the Abyss Nebula. We spent 4 centuries developing technology and building defenses, but we also spent that time watching over all of you. We prevented wars, stopped diseases, and protected your worlds from natural disasters because we believe that every life has value. Dr. Lyra Voss, who had discovered the first evidence of humanity's survival, raised her hand to speak. What do you propose we do? How can we possibly defend against such a massive invasion? By becoming something new, Helen replied. Not a collection of separate species competing for resources, but a true, united galaxy. We offer to share all of our technology freely, our defensive systems, our weapons, our knowledge of multidimensional physics. In return, we ask only that you commit to true equality and cooperation. The chamber erupted in discussions as representatives debated among themselves. Some species were eager to accept human help, while others worried about becoming dependent on human technology. President Carol White appeared via hologram from New Earth Station. The decision must be unanimous, she said firmly. Either we all work together, or we all face extinction separately. There is no middle ground when fighting. For the survival of our entire galaxy. War Marshal Vex stood up slowly, his massive frame casting a shadow across the chamber. The Draknari hegemony accepts the human proposal. We have seen what their mercy looks like, and we choose to trust in their leadership. One by one, other species added their agreement. The Carillion Empire, the Nexari Federation, even the proud Altarian Republic acknowledged that humanity offered their only hope for survival. 3 months later, the galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have imagined. Human engineers worked alongside alien scientists in massive shipyards that had been built in record time. The new ships combined human dimensional technology with the best innovations from dozens of different species. Captain Ryan Mitchell stood on the bridge of the flagship Humanity's Dawn, watching as the largest fleet in galactic history prepared for its mission to the galaxy's edge. Around him, officers from 20 different species worked together as a unified crew. All stations report ready, Captain, announced Lieutenant Sarah Kim, his human communications officer. The advance fleet is prepared to establish defensive positions at the galactic barrier. Next to her, Commander Jorik of the Dragnari worked at the tactical station. The same alien who had once mocked human existence now served proudly under human command. Long-range sensors show no sign of the Void Collective yet. We have time to complete our preparations. Ryan activated the ship-wide communication system. All vessels, this is Captain Mitchell. Today marks the beginning of a new era for our galaxy. We go not as separate species fighting for individual survival, but as one people defending our shared home. The fleet moved out toward the galaxy's edge, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of trillions of beings. Human technology had given them weapons that could fight in multiple dimensions, shields that could absorb impossible amounts of energy, and ships that could repair themselves using resources drawn from hyperspace. But more important than the technology was the unity it had created. Species that had been enemies for centuries now worked side by side. Children from dozens of different worlds attended integrated schools where they learned about cooperation rather than competition. 5 years after humanity's return from the shadows, the galaxy had become something it had never been before. Truly united. The threat of the Void Collective still loomed in the distant future, but for the first time in galactic history, Every species was working together toward a common goal. Dr. Helen Brooks, now serving as the first Secretary General of the United Galactic Alliance, stood in her office looking out at a view that would have been impossible just a few years earlier. Human children played with alien youngsters in parks built using technology from a dozen different civilizations. "We never stopped believing that this day would come," she said to her aide, a young Meridian named Kira. "Even in our darkest hours of exile, we knew that unity was possible. We just had to prove it by example." The galaxy that had once tried to erase humanity from existence now looked to humans as their greatest hope for survival. And in the end, that hope had transformed not just humanity, but every species willing to embrace a future built on cooperation, rather than fear. The stars themselves seemed brighter now, shining down on a galaxy that had finally learned the most important lesson of all, that together they were stronger than anything the universe could throw at them.